Hi, everybody. This is Warren Herman. Tonight, what we're going to speak about is the important subject of providence and trusting that things will work out in life, having hope, and having a proper perspective that allows us to have a mature, kind of sober hope in the face of life's difficulties. The COVID-19 pandemic, and we're sorry that Enzo needs to have his cage cleaned, but there's Enzo. So Enzo is eating away over there. He's being provided for. In the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, the reason why we have Enzo is because a little bird named Rosie, I wish we named the bird later Rosie, bird didn't tell us the name. That would be a very weird story. But Rosie was a little bird that actually somehow found its way to me while I was outside by the bird feeder and praying a rosary. And Rosie must have been going to that bird feeder to get some seeds because it was actually a zebra finch. It was not native to the area. It must have escaped from a house somewhere. And maybe it knew about people and figured it needed help, but it actually climbed up my pants leg and went into my jacket. If any of you guys actually know me and know my leather jacket, or the faux leather jacket that I have, that's the jacket that Rosie climbed into and was crawling across my back. And it was a really bizarre experience because Rosie was actually a very skittish bird otherwise, but even though Rosie decided to approach me in this shocking way. And I really took this almost as a sign of God's care for me during the pandemic. I was a scared person. I was very afraid of not being able to go to confession during the pandemic. I was afraid of that. And so it was very consoling to be reminded of the promise of Matthew's gospel, I believe, where it says, not even a sparrow falls to the ground without our Father knowing about it. And so this experience to have a concrete reminder while I was, in the pandemic, that God cared about me. And so that reminder came in the form of Rosie and Enzo. Enzo was purchased for Rosie, and Enzo's name is from Providence or Providence. So that's why I wanted to include Enzo at the beginning of this video about hope and providence. Because although that was a deeply consoling experience, an experience that I should remember and reflect on, that God cared for this little bird in the midst of the pandemic, and it consoled me and allowed me to have more trust in God. As I would do my work, I would see the two little birds, Rosie and Enzo, sleeping on the little perch in the cage. And Rosie has since passed away, but Enzo is still with us here. And it's a real story. And if you want documentation, there really is a picture of Rosie climbing up the pants leg. He's climbing up and he's about to go in my jacket. So there is a picture of that. So it is documented. This did occur. But it was an extraordinary experience, I think, in a very ordinary, extraordinary experience, just to kind of have this weird thing of a bird adopting you. And so what I want to bring out of this, though, is help it to serve as this discussion of, Providenzo, Enzo, as a beginning image to kind of begin our discussion of providence. Because sometimes we can get very discouraged by what happens to us in life. We can feel that God's providence is not on our side. And some things that we have to remember is that we usually get disappointed because there's a we kind of have this naive optimism that things will work out for us in life in a very clear way. We're going to get what we want. And it's going to be short. And we're going to have a quick and easy and not so messy journey. And that's not true. And many times terrible things, tragic things happen. And then we become disappointed. And then we become jaded and fall into a jaded despair. And we say, there's no point to anything. Life is a never-ending experience of meaningless suffering. And what we really need to do is go past this, and we need to have a mature and sober hope. And this mature and sober hope realizes that although things do not work out here in this world, all things work together for good for those who love God. So things work together, they don't work out. And hereafter, everything works out in the life of the final judgment, the life of the age to come. The resurrection, things work out there. That's when things work out. Hereafter. Here, things work together for good for those who love God. And, they don't necessarily work out the way we want them to. And what's deeply important here is to realize that we live in the world of J.R.R. Tolkien. And what I mean by this is that J.R.R. Tolkien identified the type of story we are in. J.R.R. Tolkien even wrote his Lord of the Rings to be this kind of story, a eucatastrophe, EU catastrophe, meaning true catastrophe. But he told us that the true catastrophe is that things work out even though they shouldn't, or in spite of us. In spite of our failure, we succeed because of God's providence. And this is a very shocking thing. You can see the beautiful way that mercy is woven into how God's providence works in Tolkien's stories, if you read Lord of the Rings. And you can see that this merciful design and the participation that's designed through mercy is an important theme of Lord of the Rings. And I'm not going to say more about that because that would spoil the story. But anyway, that's the whole thing, is that things work out despite failure because of providence and mercy and how we participate in that. So that is something really important. But the thing is that we expect life to be what's called a comedy, meaning the genre in which things are short, sweet, and work out. That's not that it's funny, but comedy meaning that the hero wins. It's short, it's clear, it's not messy. Tragedy is it's dark, it's like everything works out terrible. So life is not a comedy, clearly. But no, life is not a tragedy. Life is a eucatastrophe. And when we know this, we are greatly strengthened in our ability to deal with life and to not think that providence is malicious against us, and to not fall into that trap. It allows us to have a mature hope, that mature and sober hope, that all things work together for good here, for those who love God, and all things work out in the end, in the life of the age to come, and with heaven and resurrection and the final judgment and all that. And we can further develop this thinking by thinking about the song. There's an old song that says, "You can't always get what you want." And there's another line that says, "But if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need." And we can see that this is very much along the lines of this eucatastrophe, this participation. Because if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. But if you despair, then it just ends at the tragedy. You can't always get what you want. The comedy is we get what we need without trying. It's just we get what we want is the comedy. You can't always get what you want is the tragedy. But if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need is the eucatastrophe. Because when we get what we need, God can always be trusted to give us what we need. He can't be trusted in a sense to give us what we want. Because what we want is not always what we need. But the thing is, we have to participate. We have to participate in this thing. If you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. You can't fall into despair. So that's a way of talking about it's not perfect, but it's a way of talking about life inside the eucatastrophe. We can see this in a way like Frodo and even Sam have moments of mercy, and Bilbo have moments of mercy, especially toward Gollum in the story. And these are part of the plan, part of the purposes that are shown in the designs of providence that enable God to be merciful to us, and despite our failings, allow there to be success and draw good from what is bad. Just like if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. If you're merciful sometimes, you just might find that providence works out. It's like I'm just trying to make some connections. But because the thing is, if we don't know about this, if we think we're in a comedy, we think things are going to work out for us, we have that naive hope, or we think we're in a tragedy, we have this jaded despair, we don't have the mature hope about here and hereafter that comes, if we don't have that, what we're going to do is we're going to make false conclusions about God. We're going to say, he's bad. He's hurting me. He's just vindictive and killing my life. He's not listening. He doesn't exist. We're going to start thinking these things. He doesn't care about me. He cares about everybody else but me. Whatever it is. the thing is, once we have this eucatastrophe, we start to realize that this is the in a sense that he's doing the best that can be done. So he's not just doing the best he could do with the mess. He's drawing everything out. He's allowing somehow all of us to kind of have free will in this giant multi-user platform that is reality, and drawing everything to good out of crooked lines. It's like the most huge GPS multi-dimensional outside of time command center, that's orchestrating everything in the best plan, because this is the best way you can do it in a world that is fallen, because that's also part of the way we kind of screwed it up with our free will in a way, but that's also part of there's a way in which that's part of the plan too. It's like, but a way in which it's truly free. It's like that we really did it so that we're accountable. Like, it's a whole giant St. Boethius talks about this. And C.S. Lewis mentions how in the Screw Tape Letters, since we mentioned Tolkien, we'll mention C.S. Lewis. And we'll say, because he talks about how Boethius solved that problem of free will and God's foreknowledge, because it's kind of like God's outside of time. So he can it's like he's watching the security cameras at every moment. He knows how everything's going to go, but you still are the guy on all the security cameras. Like, he's looking at today, he's looking at tomorrow, he's looking at all the things, but you're still the one who's doing the things on all those cameras, truly doing them in succession, even though he's kind of outside the timeline looking at it all at once. And that's not exactly maybe the way it really is. There's no command center, with all the security cameras but that kind of gives us a sense of what it's like, this paradox. And in light of the truth of, this huge paradox of his foreknowledge and free will and all this, this is the best. He's always making the best choice. It's always the GPS is always calculating properly to get us where we need to go. And we need to participate in his way and do things his way so that things work out. All things work together for good for those who love God. And so we have to realize that there is this truth to the fact that he has the plan. And if we don't realize that life is a eucatastrophe that is guided by providence and that is guided by the best plan, we don't really have success then. Because what we're going to do, if we don't really know that, we're going to fall into despair. And the real thing too is that what we want to know is that there is, because everything's the best plan, we can't compare ourselves and our journeys to other people. We can't say, why is God providing for that person? Or why does God let that bad person get away with this? Or why is God doing this? Because the thing is, we think we're comparing apples to apples, but all of us have a unique journey. We're all an individual kind of fruit, so to speak. And so we all have our own criteria because we don't know, like somebody else may be growing into it's kind of like it's different species of animals. Imagine everyone is a different animal, and they say, I can't swim, but you're an elephant. Like, I can't fly, but you're a fish. Like, you're all different, and so that's why you can't compare. Because we have a different, I'm going to use a random term. I'm not using this in any weird sense. You have a different destiny. Everyone has a different destiny. I'm not saying that there's a destiny, or I'm not saying that you do have a destiny or that you don't, like in that type of a colloquial sense. But like, you're not the same thing as anybody else. You don't have the same path as anybody else. God doesn't have the same plan for you and the next person. You can't compare you to the next person because your plan is unique. God, in the educational system, they say that some people have an IEP, an individualized education plan. In the universe, in this creation, everyone has an IEP, an individualized. We all have an individualized providential plan. We can't compare ourselves to others because we're not the same people. It's not the same thing. And the thing is also, these perspectives are not a way of deluding ourselves and consoling ourselves in the face of an inexcusable God or a randomness in the face of tradition, in the face of just random, terrible things that are just random. It's not. This really is the way that God works through all things to form us into being like his Son. Because forming all people through the sufferings of life into the knowledge and expression of fatherly love is real happiness here and hereafter. This is the best that God can do. This is the best that can be done, not like in a negative sense, but we have to believe that as truth, as faith, as real truth, as a truth rooted in the grit of reality, that this is the way God is truly writing perfectly with crooked lines, that this is a master plan that we are in. And it's not a way of getting away from, it's not a way of letting God off the hook for this, because he hung himself on the cross. It's not like we're getting God off the hook. God put himself on the nail to the cross, right in the middle of this messy thing of writing straight with crooked lines. He wrote straight with the crooked line of his own death and suffered terribly. Life is a eucatastrophe, because think about it. We did the worst and got the best. We killed God and God saved us. That's a eucatastrophe. I mean, the universe just stopped existing. I mean, imagine killing the creator. I mean, that doesn't make sense, but instead the universe was renewed. So, it's like this is the world of eucatastrophe, a world of crucifixion and resurrection, a world of the rosary and the psalms, a world of the joyful, sorrowful, and glorious mysteries, not the happy mysteries or the terrible mysteries, the joyful, the sorrowful, and the glorious. That's what this is the world of, the real world, the eucatastrophe world. And when we understand that this is the world of a plan, the world of providence. Here's little Providenzo to close us out. Let's see if I can zoom in and not. Come on, let's see. There's Providenzo. There he is. Okay. So that really, I think, hopefully this video is helpful in thinking about some ways that we can really come to a true understanding of, the problem of evil, the problem of suffering, the problem of these things, and really being able to see the hand of God's providence and trusting God's providence, rather than just being like, okay, like I'm just tricking myself into thinking things are going well as God's just ruining my life. I mean, because that's sometimes we can feel that way when we can't see what kind of world we're living in. So hopefully this video is helpful in gaining perspective on those matters.